Demand for charcoal in urban areas of Ghana has been increasing over the years. While government policies have had the aim of reducing charcoal consumption by substituting with liquefied petroleum gas, LPG, what has happened in fact is continued rise in demand and consumption. Charcoal is projected to form an important source of energy for many years to come, especially as fuel in cooking and heating.
Charcoal and firewood constitute the bulk of our primary cooking fuel in the country. And the government has come up with an ambitious target. And when you talk to everybody across the globe, they say it's an ambitious one for us. Currently, our LPG access rate is 25%, and it's our target to do 50% LPG access by the year 2030. So even if, as I said, it's an ambitious target, even if we're able to achieve this 50% LPG access, that tells you that another 50% of the population will be dependent on other forms of fuel for cooking, of which majority will be bioenergy or charcoal and firewood. So we believe that that is not going to go away from us. We will still be needing them.
Given the importance of charcoal as an energy source in Ghana and the huge demand for charcoal, concerns have been raised in recent years over the sustainability of the sector. This has resulted in attempts of agencies of government in Ghana to govern and regulate the sector. This is no easy task because the sector for decades has been de facto without formal state regulation and because many people in Ghana rely on the sector for their livelihood. The Dromankese community in the Nkranza North District of Brno East region can be described as one of Ghana's charcoal production hubs. Efie Nyameche has relied on charcoal production as a main source of income for 20 years of her working life.
Me started in 93, and I'm sure I said to Bidie. I will pay Sabri. Bidie na Juman, Abuame, Amame. My family must school. My job brought to my seat down. My trouble was so good, prototype.
Charcoal production is a dominant strategy used by rural households to mitigate economic shocks. People produce charcoal to pay school fees, pay hospital bills, and attend funerals. Income from charcoal is also used to fill seasonal income shortfalls during lean agriculture seasons. The large majority of charcoal is produced from trees cleared in farmlands and trees in bush. Most of the charcoal producers are farmers.
It depends seasons. Since you know ton so come, you are to buy no onion side so open. But the man more than the man be dear no a tumpon will be adding the way Jim say, and this can enter medical car, next can a show. Ubitin ko Jibusian for 2,000 Ghana say fruit be hot. No, they acquire Juman. We did less than 1 month and no man than Naba.
The production of charcoal has become an important livelihood activity for many households and individuals.
When we quantify all these economic activities, agriculture, farming, that is crop farming, contribute 46% to their household income. And charcoal is the second one So charcoal production, charcoal trade, and wage work from charcoal contribute 17%, and it's the second source of income, which shows that charcoal production is a good source of income for this community. Then we also try to understand what motivates them to produce charcoal. And like all environmental or forest resources, first is provide them a source of income for cash and subsistence income. And of the charcoal that they produce, they only use 1%, 99% is sold to the urban areas. Then we also have what we call the gap filling. They are farmers. So in the absence of farming or during the off-season or lean season farming, you see most of them will move to produce charcoal, will take on charcoal production as an activity. So in this case, you see charcoal filling a gap in their livelihood. Then there's also what we call the safety net function. When households are faced with difficulties, economic difficulties like illness, death of a family member, and when they are in dire need of money, we ask what they do. And you realize although they are into farming, when they are in dire need of money, they tend to produce charcoal because it's a quick source of money. And also when you ask people why they produce charcoal, if they need to pay children's school fees, the merchants are the people who are always around. They give them loans, quick loans, and they produce charcoal to pay the loans.
Most charcoal producers work through a merchant. The merchant provides a financial facility for the producer to start production. The loan enables the producer to buy food, petrol, and to hire chainsaw operators to fell trees, and labor to help stack the wood for burning. The credit is granted on the promise of the delivery by the producer to the merchant of a certain number of bags at a set price. Most merchants are women, and they may be located either on the production area or in urban areas. In the latter case, the merchant will make frequent visits to the production areas to monitor the production.
20 years na me adwuma Satam no na adwuma no ye ba Satam kwa ni nua nua wo ho pa nti na ye nya bidie no na ne bo no so e wo fam kakra ma ye na fe duru ba bi no na fe bo no ikoso enua no so ni ho no mo na ye nua no de o ma hye mfuo no a wo mo ku adwuma wa krom ha pa nti mfuo no mu nua no na bibia wo mu twama ye discount ayifo no sesarafo no a no mo twam because ye ma ye ntimi hye bidie no enti wo mu twa sika na de be man no kora no uti anye ya ba kora so no aton ama obi because ono so no ho kire no
ye niam no nke ya ho kire ba binom ya adwane afiri ye nchen akwa say one city take it back one city de emu ya na ye 30 pesos e na mutu mu ba 50 pesos se si ye na no mo frɛ ya mo se ye ntua one city enti ya no mo guso e kontoka denden de aye se one city ne de ano ya enti o mo nte so maye a mo nyante ase aye no mo e ko hontoka.
These merchants play a very important role in the charcoal commodity chain as a link between the production side and the consumption side.
There are about 66 million US dollars. That's the wealth that the charcoal industry generates on an annual basis in Ghana. Now also try to look at the profit distribution along the charcoal commodity chain. So look at the charcoal commodity chain. We have the producers, the merchants, the wholesalers, transporters, retailers, and the other actors. Then what you see is that the wholesalers and the retailers and the transporters, more or less, they reap much of the income in the charcoal market. So when we take the merchants and the transporters together, they reap about 80% of the profit in the entire charcoal sector. And then we also see that the producers, the income that they generate from the charcoal industry is more or less like relatively very, very low. And there are about 8% of the income in the charcoal industry also goes to the various institutions like the Forestry Commission, the assembly chiefs in the form of council tickets, charcoal conveyance certificates, and fees that the chiefs are also taking from the various actors in the industry. So basically that's what we saw. Then also we're trying to understand how come some of the actors were getting more income than the others. Then what we discovered was that often the producers, they tend to get low income because when they produce the charcoal, they don't go to the cities to sell the charcoal. And the charcoal price in the cities are also very high. But because they sell the charcoal in the villages, they are not able to get good prices. So the merchants will come and buy the charcoal at a very more or less like lower prices, and they buy it on large quantity. And when they sell to the cities like Accra and Takoradi, they sell and also they're able to get more income from the market.
On a typical day, several trucks are stationed in Dromankese community to cart charcoal to urban areas, mostly Accra and Kumasi. These trucks load between 300 and 400 sacks of charcoal. Evans Ajay loads a sack to the trucks, something he has been doing for the past 4 years.
I'm a baha, it's me the baby 1 week, and I'm in load Nam Cocansra, a beer mountain in Amitimucom, but me and son. To me and son, be a one sky mania dear. Me cover be a 1.5. 1.5 and 1 I'm there to me home 2 years me down your money. Me buy me from back, me send a bear. Your home tree when we are
48-year-old Yawankuma has been transporting charcoal for the past 20 years, a venture he deems lucrative.
Aboame, they have a mammy in secondary school. And your crown, I'm in Ibu for this area, no Becasacheme. And the dear, care.
Transporters and merchants, however, have concerns with state institutions. The state institutions argue that production and trade is unsustainable, and hence there's a need for regulation to ensure sustainability and to attract meaningful investment into the sector.
The continuous availability of the resources we are talking about, because if there are no trees to be harvested, you cannot talk about charcoal production. So development of the resource base should be a topmost priority. And I'm happy to tell you that the Forestry Commission has a forest plantation development strategy, a 25-year forest plantation development strategy. And if we are able to implement it to the letter, I am sure it will help to increase the tree population in this country. And it is not only being done by Forestry Commission, the private sector is involved, both locally and people coming from outside. It's a very comprehensive program. To me, that holds the key to sustainability.
As a first step in the regulation of the sector, Ghana's Forestry Commission has already put in place a requirement for charcoal conveyance certificate, CCC, to allow road transport of charcoal, and the certificate goes with a fee depending on the size of the vehicle. The revenue from the fee is supposed to be used for enhancing the sustainability of the sector, including wood fuel plantations. Because of lack of transparency, it is not known if revenues are spent as intended.
We give them free seedlings. We give any interested person free seedlings. And then we also sometimes support these woodlot establishment. We support them with tending. We give them tending, and then technical advice, also technical support, especially pegging and planting. We give them this technical support. Yes, currently we've not started, harvesting these trees, but the idea is that by 3-4 years' time, they need to harvest and then use it for charcoal production. And then with the assistance from the Energy Commission we have trained some of these charcoal producers on the improved kiln. Now, it will come to a time you need to, before we give you permit to produce charcoal, you need to have at least a wood lot.
There is legal requirement for all charcoal producers to have a permit from the Energy Commission. This requirement is on paper only and is currently not enforced on the ground. But producers fear that future efforts to enforce the requirement of a permit will jeopardize their production and incomes. Also, traditional authorities who are custodians of land and are currently granting rights to charcoal producers fear that the permit requirement administered by the state institutions will take away authority from them and also erode the significant revenues they presently extract from the production.
So wokɔhye bidie no a 100 bucks bia no yɛwɔ 10 bucks ɛwɔ mu nti na sɛ wopɛ bidie no obi a wohye no wopɛ bidie no so a animonimu a wodi woba yɛdi 1 million na 10 bucks no aka wɔ hɔ na ya wo deɛ wobɛtua 1 million a na kyerɛ sɛ ho yɛ.
The proposals of statutory bodies in Ghana to formalize the charcoal sector are all based and justified on the claim of charcoal production deteriorating the environment through deforestation.
The traditional way of charcoal production cannot continue, and for that matter we have to pursue lines of action such as sustainable feed supply and efficient carbonization process are what particularly EPA is looking out for. Because if you want to enter into this business and we are not sure of where you are going to have your sustainable supply of raw materials, then it is assumed that you are seriously impacting on the environment by seriously cutting and felling down trees, which is resulting in deforestation.
The deforestation narrative is a narrative with deep historical roots. Colonial foresters in the 1920s and 1930s assumed that the savanna was derived from an earlier dense forest vegetation type that had been degraded to savanna as a result of the destructive farming practices of the local people. Researchers, however, say the narrative of charcoal production leading to deforestation is not supported by scientific evidence. It's more appropriate to talk about degradation of the vegetation, that is, charcoal production resulting in changes in species distribution and tree sizes.
Charcoal production is like a secondary product. It's the agricultural production that is in the focus. So if somebody or if it's to be blamed for deforestation, then it should rather be the agriculture and the agricultural production rather than the charcoal production. As I said, it's a side product. Secondly, charcoal production obviously also takes place in areas where there's no agricultural production in the bush, so to speak. But here, the story is that these environments are really weak and fragile and vulnerable. But in actual facts, these natural environments are actually adapted and able to cope with drought, with fire, and also with charcoal production. So charcoal production will normally not reduce all the trees. It will be selective and only target a number of tree species that are good for charcoal production and leaving the other trees on the land. So already there we can see that it's not really leading to deforestation, which is the complete clearing of the vegetation. And also many of the species that are used for charcoal are able to sprout from the stump when they are cut. They will sprout and new trees will come up. That is not to say that there's no impact of charcoal production, but so it's very likely, and also our research shows that in those communities where you have had charcoal production for many years, it might be difficult to find the same species, or the same tree species, and in the same sizes as before. So there is an impact, but it's not just outright deforestation.
There is presently in Ghana a huge focus on support for tree planting for charcoal production and for more efficient production methods, especially improved cairns.
I think it should begin from the continuous availability of the resources we are talking about. Because if there are no trees to be harvested, you cannot talk about charcoal production. So development of the resource base should be a topmost priority.
Land must be made available for them to enter into woodlots. Because when they are able to enter into woodlot production, and that cannot be done as individuals, they must come together as groups. And they must also be given the required species that must be grown, because we have traditional species that can grow fast. They must have the recommended species that they can grow within a specified area. If it is large, then they could do the harvesting in rows. That is a sustainable way of doing this. Are you getting me? And by doing so, at least it will have less impact. And we must also encourage, like I have said, that other people, corporate organizations must also enter, like the assemblies who have a stake in some of these things, must also enter and ensure that they assist them with credit facilities so that they will may have access to some of the improved technologies so that they will use. I think with this, it will be okay. And I must also admit that our fees and charges must also be reviewed so that at least, no, they must be reviewed to really meet the demands of the people that we meet, because these are peasant people who are in the production.
Domankese Charcoal Producers Association is committed to producing charcoal by growing trees alongside their food crops.
Na nana droma hedi mayen eka waha yedi dua enua ene cashew se ne beya ko man no ina benya mfaso afiri so e bota pa n se ye dua enua abo wiamu nsakra ho ban eno nti se the climate change santi na man ye gina so nti ekuwe bi na de bre yen se o mba kire kire yen se yen hwe ne mo wiase wiamu nsakra ho ban DGM so that
ya yedi ya tubu ho anam ho ya dua kwa no nka o ma hye mu ma na ye ntimi nua ne kese se de be ya ye betuma nya nua no a eben kuro no ama ayi ne kakra nkwanse ne nọọso kakra na ye betumi anya bi ase.
Other young people are also accessing support from the Forestry Commission to venture into tree plantation.
When you plant the forestry, when you are into forestry at least, though the time for you to end, let me say the time frame is much longer than the crops. This is just a long time project, but for the crops it's yearly. Every year or 8 months you have to cultivate or you have to harvest. But this time, like for the cassia like this, if it is woodlot, at least it has to take you 4 years before you can achieve something or you can get something. Because when this one takes me 4 years and the crop aspect of it takes me, let me just say yearly, at the end of the tenure, when you sum up everything, you see that you arrive at a point, the same point.
But tree planting for charcoal production and shift to new improved production techniques are not without challenges. Resource-poor farmers may often lack the knowledge, land and financial resources to invest in wood loss or improve technologies. Support programs by government agencies or other actors need to take seriously into account the constraints faced by the producers of charcoal. This includes issues of land and tree tenure, so that producers do not end up losing access to their lands and to the trees that they have planted. And that is not only the better off by producers who are able to benefit from interventions, but also the poor. There's room for improvement in current programs in these issues. Currently, efforts spearheaded by the Energy Commission, the Forestry Commission and the Environmental Protection Agency all propose with the claim of making the sector more sustainable. While these efforts hold many ideas of a potential to improve the charcoal sector, there is a need to examine the proposed measures critically in relation to whether they are likely to be able to be implemented and work on the ground and in relation to their consequences for the livelihood of the small-scale producers who depend on charcoal production.
Whether it's for good or for bad, people don't like change. So there will definitely be some resistance during the process. But I believe that if we undertake a very good public education and sensitization of all the players in the industry, they would understand the issues available and then work closely with us.
But as a step towards sustainability, these charcoal producers are being encouraged to improve their production and marketing processes to rake in more revenue from their operations. We do not think that all of what is currently on the drawing board is feasible or implementable. Some elements of the proposed formalization of the charcoal sector in Ghana does not recognize the complex biological, social, and economic context in which charcoal production and trade take place. It appears wisely to implement the plans in a step-by-step manner and at each stage build on the experiences generated from the implementation to this point. There is no easy and quick fix to govern and make changes to a sector that has largely been unregulated for decades. If proper thoughts and consideration are not taken, the proposed plans run the risk of collapse, and even worse, run the risk of compromising the livelihoods of the people who rely on charcoal production and trade. Above all, there is a need for better coordination between agencies with mandates in the sector. Above all, the Energy Commission, the Forestry Commission, and the Environmental Protection Agency.
Agobaba madiache obrekwe anayeno agobaba madiache akomo brekwomo akokomo brekwomo sasa brekwo na buna mope ai Akomo, brekwomo, sasa brekwo na buna mope ai. Akobaba madiache, obrekwe enayeno. Akobaba madiache.